Hello and welcome to part two in our influencer marketing video series. Last time we had a general overview of influencer marketing and kind of where they are and what the business case is for it. Now let's move on to a topic that I was going to save for the end, but I've decided to insert it here. That is, AI influencers. If you haven't seen this before, these are fake people that have amassed massive followings on social media. The first AI influencer really came about a couple of years ago, but this photo here, like this is, I think you pronounce it Aitana Lopez. She is not real. That is an AI image. She's a gamer. Obviously, she's nice to look at, but her content, I believe it's partially in Spanish, partially in English. Um, she gets a lot of brand endorsements, brand deals. My question, of course, is one, um, what are brands doing here? And two, what is the upside and downside of this? The biggest AI influencer I'll show you in a couple of slides. I have several here. Um, the idea here is that AI influencers I mean, the fact that we can create them has kind of given rise to people that just went ahead and did it. It's kind of like the classic Ian Malcolm line from Jurassic Park, if you've ever seen that. Just because you realized that you could didn't mean that you should. And I think we're at an interesting point here with AI influencers that, for all intents and purposes, they look like real people for the most part. That most of them, at least all the ones that I see here, that I'll share with you here, they do disclose that they are AI. But as time goes on and AI gets a little bit more scary good, I have a feeling we're going to start running into some issues with that whole disclosure piece. So here's Ima. She's, I believe she's on the left. Let's talk about the positives. I don't really know much about these AI influencers, other than I found them on Instagram. They're all on Instagram to start. I've yet to see influencers really take hold from the AI standpoint on TikTok or really any of these other platforms, just because AI generated video with people isn't quite there yet. I personally have actually experimented with an AI platform that has like avatars that will create content and you can give them a script and they'll speak. They have a ways to go. I don't think they're going to amass much in the way of followings, but hey, it's possible. So the positives of AI influencers: one, they're customizable. They can be pretty much whatever you want. As a creator, I should say. But also as a brand, they're a little bit more versatile. They can pretty much do what you want. You're not going to run into issues where could say, it's not up to the influencer, it's up to the person behind the influencer. And somebody like this, if you think about it from the YouTube standpoint, if you have a product, say a new clothing line, you're like, hey, Ima, you want to check out these clothes? Like, she's not going to say these look bad. It's going to be a little bit of a different conversation. It's not something where there's a ton of personality behind it. They're also predictable. They're not going to get embroiled in controversy, other than the fact that they are AI. You're not going to see people getting canceled. There's not going to be a PewDiePie situation here. If you know who that is, great throwback. You're a millennial like me. If you don't, just know PewDiePie was Mr. Beast before Mr. Beast, and got canceled for some controversial statements he said years and years ago. Now, AI influencers aren't going to say that. Again, there are other ways that they can, the whole their existence is a little bit controversial, but they're not going to say anything like overly political. They're not going to go off. They're not going to, spout off on other topics. They're not going to get pulled over for a DUI. They're not going to kill people. Like, they're not. That's just not how AI influencers work, and that does, on one side, make them a little bit safer. Finally, they're affordable. They're usually a little bit less expensive because they don't go anywhere. Like, they're not going to physically go to a place. It's just somebody behind the curtain really working the magic. All right, here's little Michaela. She is the most followed AI influencer, I believe, at least as of mid 2025. So some challenges. I had to scroll through her feed for a while before I found a really lifelike photo. In fact, like she looks, I don't really understand why she is so popular. I think she was just the first one to hit the market, the first big time AI influencer. But most of her photos look pretty fake. There is no question. You know, if you look at the last two I showed, like they look pretty real. If I hadn't said anything, you might not have known that they were AI. With Lil Michaela, she's very clearly AI generated. There is no question. There's a lot of, I mean, if you go to her Instagram account, you'll see like, ugh, it's almost like, again, compared to some current ones, it looks fairly rudimentary. And I mean, that's a huge issue, right? That's the number one challenge. It's very fake. But also there's no emotional connection. Like maybe I do think the emotional connection could come with time. I think this is a technological limitation at the moment that will someday be not as big of an issue. But also, if you're a brand, you know, on one side, it's good because everything's based on data. But on the other side, you don't see a lot of authenticity. Authenticity is a key element of influencers and how they exert power, how they get a community to engage with them and really work with them. But you know, it's kind of that question of between the heart and the mind. Everything is based on the numbers with them because there's no authenticity to work with. Finally, the biggest challenge, obviously, is the ethical considerations that these people are AI generated. Um, I won't go into too much with into like what all those are. I'm sure you can think of some yourself. But there are ethical considerations to look at if you're a brand considering working with an AI influencer. You know, if you go back, these are all really nice positives, especially if you pricing wise. With most of AI influencers, they're pretty cheap. But then you've got to look at the pros and the cons. I think the last 2 points here are the biggest issue. Lil Michaela has millions of followers, so maybe you can get past the lack of authenticity. Maybe the emotional connection will come over time, but there's a lot of content that looks very fake. And again, she's very clear, or the person behind the curtain is very upfront with the fact that she is AI. All right. Next up, I just want to talk about, you know, given where we are with AI influencers and influencers in general, like I mentioned in my last video about just how platforms on how social media platforms are evolving or not evolving. We are in a time when I believe we're nearing the popping of the AI, of the influencer bubble. Um, I mentioned at the very beginning of the last video that hey, influencers started with just people with massive followings who can make some money on the side by promoting products. That has erupted into something unlike anything we've ever seen. People now graduate from college wanting to be an influencer. We have people that are creating content, they go viral for one thing, and it's not even something that they like, but they realize, oh, the people love me for this. This is what I'm best at. And now I got to focus on it. And they end up creating content about something that they don't even really believe in or trust or love. And it's an interesting world. I mean, it is kind of a microcosm for the larger idea of capitalism and businesses, but we're also reaching a point where costs are increasing for brands, as are the risks. Um, First, there's a steady decline in trust of influencers. There are some influencers where it's painfully obvious that they're just doing it for a paycheck. Also, you start to wonder, okay, if there's a lot of big influencers on YouTube, a lot of people with tens of millions of followers. The one that I like to look at, I use as an example, as a group of guys from years ago. They're called Dude Perfect. They're the guys that could like throw a ping pong ball and do a solo cup from 100 yards away. You've probably seen like trick shot videos like that before. You know, they've made millions and millions of dollars over the years. Um, but you can see almost all of their content has a sponsor, has an advertiser. Most of us just kind of, it's kind of like banner blindness, where you see like an ad online and you just kind of look past it. Now we do kind of look past it, but now we start to wonder, okay, who's writing the paychecks here? And at some point, is their content going to start feeling a little bit over commercialized? I will say most of the Dude Perfect videos tend to stay true to their brand. um, they do have some that feel like they're selling out a little bit, but for the most part, it's the same stuff that they've always done. But there are other influencers, I don't want to name any, who it feels like they've completely sold out and they no longer are doing what made them popular in the first place. It feels like they are just a walking advertisement for various corporations. That erodes trust, that erodes engagements, and more than anything else, it causes really, a lack of desire to watch and engage with influencers overall. So I think that's what I mean by the bubble might pop soon. We're going to reach a point where influencer marketing is going to have to do something. I think the industry is going to continue growing. You'll see in the next video there's more growth projected, but at a certain point, something will have to happen. I don't know what that is, but influencer marketing, if it keeps growing at the rate it is, um, it doesn't seem like a sustainable model for brands. That means do your influencer marketing now while you can, but be very, very careful who you work with, what the terms are, and kind of like how your deals are lined up. So that's the end of this video. On the next one, we're going to talk about what makes a good influencer for brands looking. And then later, we're going to get more into the compensation, the way that it works when how you pay them, what they're looking for, what kind of engagement rates you should be looking for, and all of that. So stay tuned to part 3.